I feel like when I come in city council,
I share everything. I also freelance here. A lot of old people don't know how to find it. At least you're not like Ron that goes like.
Well, and you guys raise your hand because I have it on there that says raise your hand. I know they right on your screen.
Well, you know how many years they've been in here doing the city council meetings?
Well, I've been to many of them.
I haven't been to one yet, but I want to go to the library.
You don't need to leave.
Everybody does it though. The only person that doesn't do it.
Yeah, that's
I always, so now I'm like really strong. It's always fine for a while.
Until you son.
No.
My kids tell me that I don't have to yell.
Oh, I do that.
It's like, well, you're deaf in your left ear and that's your holding it.
I always put it in the Sugar Town, Royal Town, the last election.
Well, I take them on side things. I message them directly and I talk to them about it and I just let them know that it's ready to be called, you know? I'm like, it needs to be safe.
You got somebody following like a good number.
It's like relatively new. I don't know how you do it, but everybody
It's good back
Some
and
of them are
forth
petty
too.
conversations and they're still cool with it.
Yeah, like I was saying, good back and forth. Like sometimes, like I won't get something insulting you right away, or get something like sweating. What's up, Patricia? Yeah. It's my new acronym. Okay, yeah, go for it. So we can share it all over because you're gonna have to try. I mean, the non-profit one. Yeah.
And I'll do the one directly.
Right?
Yeah. Because where it was, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Let's do a mic check real quick. Right, right? Hello, check.
I think this is the first one we're doing.
That hurting my feet.
Either? One, two, three, four. That probably looks like the back of his head too. I'm gonna probably crank it down a little bit. Thank you. About that, I give it like 1 minute. All right.
I got the reverse though a little bit. I got a gray tie. I got a black tie.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah. Tell him on NBC. I'm ready to go. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Just at a press conference, I gotta call you after.
Alan Payton.
My reporter backed out last minute.
Yeah.
So you,
Miss Wilson.
okay, I'll call you afterwards. Okay. All right. I don't know how long it's gonna last. Bye.
I think we're live. Can you go on live and check if we're live?
I'll check if you're live.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You are live.
That means I get the first question.
As soon as all the reporters let me know that you're ready to go, I'll get started.
This is on your official mayor's page. Yeah.
Well, I'm doing my distance.
Oh, make room for the vice mayor.
Here, I can step back. You can step back.
Yeah. Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
ready?
You're on.
Okay, so I think we're ready to get started. I want to thank everybody for being here today to talk about some important measures that I'll be proposing to the City Council starting in the next couple of weeks. I'll start working with the City Manager, the Chief of Police, our police union representatives, and other stakeholders on these critically important measures around police reform in our community. First, I want to start by saying there's been a lot of talk out in our community regarding some incidents. First, I'll start by acknowledging that in the last week of the holiday season of December 25th, we did lose a resident in police custody, and his name was Angelo Pinto. I have visited with the family, and I offered my condolences and certainly my prayers. I don't know all the details, and all of the details yet remain to be seen, as there is an active investigation by the DA's office currently. And so that's all I'll have to say for now. In addition to that, we did experience a shooting here in Antioch by a Stockton resident. A firefighter and a paramedic were both shot with non-threatening life injuries. They went to the hospital. They have been released. I did hear from the chief of the fire department that both individuals are now safe at their homes, and that they appreciate all of the hard work by our first responders and our police officers who responded to the call. And I know every resident in the city of Antioch also appreciates and respects the work that they did this past weekend. In addition to that, I just want to let folks know that in my hour and a half conversation with the chief last night regarding this and other matters, he did inform me that there is an 11-year-old daughter of the suspect is still missing, along with their mother. And so, of course, this will be important, as we'll need the public's eyes and ears, ensuring that they find these individuals in an expeditious manner. I will say that community cameras in our community did help in identifying the vehicle, and that's how APD was able to find them in such an expeditious manner. So again, we appreciate all of their hard work. That being said, we're here to talk about an important subject, and that's police reform. Everybody knows that I have not been shy about the importance of reform, not only locally but globally. And this is a conversation that started post George Floyd. And frankly, since the murder of George Floyd, there has, as I said, a national and global awakening that has made the streets of our nation the epicenter of expression, frustration, and hope, including right here in Antioch. Nationally, the awakening made its way to the halls of Congress, made its way to state legislatures throughout our country, and made its way to many, many local jurisdictions nationally and here in our state. I'm saddened to say that there's one notable exception in the real conversation around reform, and that's Antioch. Before I continue, I do want to acknowledge Vice Mayor Monica Wilson, who will be speaking later. We also have Con Johnson, who has been a critical advisor on our police reform efforts, as he's chairing our transition team related to police reform. So he and I will be meeting with our chief and others soon. Quite frankly, if our police department is going to do the same thing 5, 10, 20 years from now, we have all failed as a city, because we did not evolve with the times including our changing demographics. Luckily, the voters have more foresight than those who seek to divide us based on pro and anti-law enforcement political rhetoric. That's all it is. Political rhetoric served to divide our community, and as your leader, I refuse to fall victim of that nonsense. We will not allow it to dictate how we're going to pursue police reform in this community. Voters recognize that reform is actually synonymous with progress, improvement, betterment, refinement, and adaptation. In that spirit, today I'm announcing a series of police reform measures that I will be proposing as the major first step towards building a police department that every segment of our community can trust. If looked at objectively, I am seeking to implement common sense solutions, responsible police reforms that I campaigned on, that will provide our police department with the necessary tools to do their job, that will allow our community to feel safe, respected, and equally will allow for officers to be seen as public servants and not an occupying force by every resident in our community. I firmly believe that our police officers and public servants who enter this very difficult vocation have a very difficult job to do. They put their lives at risk daily. And framework to begin the process for us as policymakers to get our work done. The first area that I will be focused on, or will be proposing, is of course around mental health, which has to be the focal point of our reforms. Not just limited to how law enforcement responds to mental health calls, but the actual mental health and wellness of our law enforcement personnel. Therefore, we'll seek to have a mental health crisis response team here in Antioch. We would like to require that our police officers and our dispatch workers have an annual mental health assessment to ensure that our officers are, to ensure that the well-being of our officers is constantly monitored, as well as our dispatch workers. They have a hard job to do, dispatch workers. And so recently in California, we reclassified dispatch workers as first responders, and rightfully so, because they have a difficult job to do. So to talk more about this mental health crisis response team, I'll hand it over to Vice Mayor Monica Wilson, who has been doing tremendous work in this area as it relates to our city.
Good morning. I prepared a statement on what I've learned about mental health crisis response. We as a society have placed an enormous burden on police services to solve crises deriving from mental health, substance use, and homelessness. 50 years of failed mental health policy has placed law enforcement on the front lines of mental illness crisis response and turned jails and prisons into the new asylums. Deinstitutionalization, outdated treatment laws demanding a person become violent before intervention, discriminatory federal Medicaid funding practices, and the prolonged failure of states to fund their mental health system drive those in need of care into criminal justice and correction systems rather than into the public health system where they belong. An estimated 7.9 million adults in the United States live with severe mental illness that distorts their thinking. Treatment, in most cases, can control psychiatric symptoms common to these diseases, but the system that once delivered psychiatric care for them has been systematically dismantled over the last half-century. Given the prevalence of mental illness in police shootings, reducing encounters between on-duty law enforcement and individuals with the most severe psychiatric disease may represent the single most immediate practical strategy for reducing fatal police shootings in the United States. Evidence-based treatment for severe mental illness exists. The disproportionate risk of criminal justice involvement associated with mental illness occurs chiefly among the less than 2% of the adult population with untreated severe mental illness. Treating the untreated is a proven practice for reducing the role of mental illness in all criminal justice involvement, including in deadly law enforcement encounters. So where do we go from here? Local governments are establishing innovative and proven programs to foster community safety outside of their police departments. Cities everywhere from Rochester, New York to Albuquerque, New Mexico are launching first response programs to meet mental health and homelessness related 911 calls with the right response at the right time. Cities across the country are investing in community-based violence prevention to treat violence from a public health approach. Real change is possible in the current moment with the perfect storm of innovative thinking, the audacity to reimagine public safety, and the public support for the systemic change. Yet, without the financial investment to scale up these transformational safety strategies, we will miss the moment to impact change for our community and for those whose lives depend on it. As our community demands racial justice, it's clear that a new first responder system that sends help instead of handcuffs is needed and desired. More and more cities are turning to crisis prevention teams to assist law enforcement when it comes to calls from individuals suffering from mental illness or experiencing traumatic episodes. We need to ask ourselves, are we sending the right team to assist in a mental health crisis? It is time to invest in evidence-based programs that do work. Mental health emergency response, violence prevention programs, restorative justice school-based programs. I'm asking the council today that we invest in mobile crisis teams that will send the right team to respond to meet the needs of those suffering from mental illness. Thank you.
All right, so that's mental health, and so from there we go on to training. Training is critically important for any agency, every organization. I think everybody standing here has had some type of function, job, wherever where you've received training, and ongoing training is always critically important. So what I'm asking council to consider, or what I'll bring forward to council, is that we establish a training paradigm that's publicly reviewed and updated annually, built around the following principles. The first principle is, of course, procedural justice, relationship building and policing, implicit bias training, crisis intervention, conflict resolution, mediation, appropriate engagement with youth, LGBT, and gender nonconforming individuals, English language learners, individuals from different religious affiliations, and individuals who are differently abled. And of course, de-escalation and minimizing use of force whenever possible. 3, demilitarizing our local police. We've all seen the images. It's not a secret that many local law enforcement agencies have taken a lot of military equipment from the federal government. And sometimes our local police department looks like an occupying force. And I just don't believe that that's the principle enshrined of why policing was even considered in the first place. I believe that policing is the community and the community is policing. And if we are to stick to that simple principle, then having militarized equipment like tanks on our street do not jive with that principle. And so I'm asking for an immediate ban on accepting, purchasing any military equipment from the federal, state, or private entities moving forward. We will no longer accept it. 4th, increasing police accountability. Councilmember Mike Barbanica was supposed to be here to talk about body cameras and dash cams, but I have not heard from him this morning, so I'll just continue on. As you all know, Councilmember Barbanica is a retired law enforcement officer, so his expertise on this is critically important. I will start by sharing some facts so that we can stop spreading misinformation. I've been on the council for 4 years, and in that first year in 2017, police body cameras were brought to the council as an informational item. The department asked us for more time to look into body cameras. After that, it never came back. let me be very clear to everybody. The mayor controls the agenda. So if it never came back, that means the former mayor decided not to bring it forward. I'm deciding to bring it forward, and we're going to bring it forward in March. We're going to bring body cameras. We will discuss the policies that govern body cameras to ensure that there's accountability built in, and we will also talk about dash cameras. In addition to that, I will be asking that we independently review on-duty police officer complaints by the public. By either moving those components out of the police department and into an independent body within City Hall, or establishing a police officer accountability department that would receive, investigate, and resolve all civilian complaints against on-duty police officers in 120 days. Now, that's important because for me, fairness, opportunity, and community are the three governing principles of mine. And while to some it may seem like a fair process to submit your complaint to the police department to investigate themselves, that's fine. But not everybody in our community believes that that's fair. And as long as we have that discrepancy, it's going to remain unfair, and we're going to always have this question about the police department. Well, that remedies this, because then people have the avenue to go take an independent approach. In addition, we'd like to ensure that police officers that conduct stops ensure that it's written in our policies that they give their names, their badge number, and reason for their stop, and a card with instructions on to how to file any complaints if needed. Customer service should be our #1 priority. In addition to that, I'd like to propose to council to establish an interim city council committee for police oversight. So this would be a committee of the entire council, interim, until we establish a police oversight commission. And of course, all of these things are going to require our partners in law enforcement, including the police union, because how these processes function have to do with police personnel. So we have to be respectful of that. We can't just mandate certain things without having buy-in from all entities in this process. So in the interim, we will review and approve police policy. We'll review and audit all police complaints. We'll review resolutions for disciplinary actions, and we'll proactively review our use of force policies to ensure that the community gets to participate in that process. Everything that I'm saying, every single local jurisdiction that has a police department already has the capacity to do. They just choose not to do it. And so we can do it here. We can also then move those responsibilities over to an independent commission so that we can continue that work. Improving police hiring practices to ensure that this is not a place that we have, that this is a place for any officer with a triple pass to lay their roots in. Antioch will not be that. So as part of that, we want to make sure that, that moving forward, all lateral candidates who are currently under investigation for excessive use of force or any misconduct will be disqualified from the process. If you have a sustained excessive use of force complaint or misconduct complaint on your records, you will be disqualified from our process. We also need to ensure that that we consider incorporating, and this is obviously, it has to require a conversation with our law enforcement partners. Consider incorporating the implicit association test into the hiring process. Lastly, let me continue.
Okay.
Lastly, we want to establish a chief of police hiring process that is open, transparent, and inclusive of the community. Most cities do this. In our last hire, we did not do that. Would we have had the same outcome? Probably so. But it's important that the community's voice be reflected in that. And lastly, in terms of our first phase of police reforms, we need to establish a notification system that clearly lays out what the mayor, and when the mayor, the city council, city manager, and city attorney should be communicated to concerning major incidents related to the Antioch Police Department. We cannot be left to social media to find out what in God's name is happening in our city. That's not right. We're responsible. We as elected officials, you all elected us to be responsible for every single agency in our city, including the police department. And simply not knowing and being left to finding out things on social media is inappropriate. And we will no longer allow that to happen. So today we take the first step in giving, in building more transparency, making the process more engaging for the community, and truly really realizing that principle that police is the community and the community is the police. There will be more to come as we still are wrapping up the community conversation takeaways, in that the firm is coming up with recommendations that they'll present to council. That will be also a public process at a meeting. So if there's anything that derives that's maybe outside of what the framework that I've described here, we'll consider those. So for now, those are our police reform measures that I'll be proposing. It's my hope that my colleagues rise to the challenge and recognize that those who are fighting to stop us from having this critically important conversation have been and will continue to be on the wrong side of history. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time. And with that, we'll end the press conference. And if there are any questions, I'll take them on the slide. Yes.
Two quick questions. One, what was it? You said something implicit. I didn't catch that. The implicit what? You said it right after the.
I know. Yep,
make sure
right
to move
here.
forward. All candidates are currently under investigation, which is qualified.
Implicit association test. It's related to implicit bias.
Okay, I hadn't heard of that before. All right, so the question is, why aren't you waiting until the actual? Why have this now? It seems a little premature, Mr. Mayor, to have this press conference now before the report comes back from CNA on the Bridging the Gap form.
Because that was never intended. That was never intended to inform the police reform process that I had laid out when I got elected, when I ran for mayor, and when I was on the city council. So we took that information that you're describing, and we said we'll have it. I inherited it, and I said I will finish it to the end. We're at the end. We're gonna get to the March meetings. If there's anything else that will inform this process, we'll take the community conversations and inform this process. But laying out this information now is not premature. Our community has been waiting for this for some time, and this is what we got elected to do. So we're just meeting the things we said we were gonna do. A little, in my belief, in a timely fashion.
You keep saying we. It's you and the Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, we as a city council, because part of this, we inherited the community conversations, so that's we.
Okay, all right.
Matt Boone with KCBS. Mr. Mayor, can you just describe what the mobile mental health task force will look like? How many officers will they be armed, and exactly what does that structure
It won't be a
look like?
law enforcement entity. It'll be a mental health crisis response team. That's what we want to look at. There are several models we've looked at. One we looked at was up in
Hi. So the model we looked at was in Eugene, Oregon, which has been taking place for the last 30 years, and they've been quite successful. And their team involves a separate mental health team that works in conjunction with the police department. So that team is comprised of mental health professionals, psychiatrists, their education and de-escalation tactics. They're also radioed into the police. They would be, the example in Eugene, Oregon is they're wired into the 911 dispatch center. So if they come to a mental health crisis where they may indeed need the help of the police department, they can radio them.
Excuse me. There's no smoking. There's no smoking. There's no smoking. Excuse me. There's no smoking. There's no smoking. You're within a certain distance of the.
Where's the sign?
There's no smoking.
Why don't you pass an ordinance, Mr. Thorpe? Get your hands up.
Dude, come on, kids.
Disgusting.
Ain't no smoking, man. Fuck you.
That's our
All right, let's continue.
So-
Yeah, not everybody. That's not the majority.
I'm
So it's a
sorry,
team
it's a
that-
public meeting.
And you're littering. The public's letting you know.
Call the cops.
People, stop engaging. Stop engaging.
Stop
please.
engaging. He's riotous.
So it's a team that works alongside with our police department. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question.
All right.
Why
So
are you
are there
blocking
any,
up the residents of Antioch?
are there any other
Facebook.
press
I don't
questions?
care. He's blocking us on Facebook. He says, I'll answer your questions on
All right.
Facebook,
Have a good
but
day,
he
everybody.
blocks us
Thank
all
you for
from
participating.
Facebook. Can't imagine why.